Why coordination became political? At first, coordination felt neutral, a technical solution to complexity, a way to keep systems stable without force or command. But slowly, almost invisibly, coordination stopped being just a method and became a source of power itself. London had embraced coordination out of necessity. Control no longer scaled. Borders no longer held. Authority could not move fast enough. Aligning actions across institutions became the safest way to manage risk. If everyone moved together, shocks softened. Stability followed. To understand why this mattered, we have to return to the moment when coordination began deciding outcomes rather than supporting them. Aligning behavior stopped being optional. Those who moved out of sync paid a price. Access narrowed. Signals hardened. Coordination began shaping who benefited and who didn't. The reveal emerged when alignment started excluding as much as it protected. Decisions were no longer made through command or law, but through shared expectations that were difficult to challenge. If you aligned, you belonged. If you didn't, you were isolated, regardless of merit or legality. London felt this shift acutely. Coordination was no longer just operational. It was directional. Choosing how to align, when to align, and with whom to align began determining influence. Power moved into timing, participation, and inclusion. This was the turning point. Coordination stopped being invisible infrastructure and became contested terrain. What looked like neutral synchronization now carried values, priorities, and consequences. Who coordinated with whom mattered as much as what they decided. London was entering a new phase. Coordination was no longer just about stability. It was about power, and power, once visible, is always political. As coordination gained influence, London's financial system began sorting itself along invisible lines. Some actors were consistently inside alignment loops. Others hovered at the edges. Access to coordination became a form of privilege. Quiet, powerful, and rarely acknowledged. This shift changed incentives immediately. Firms invested less in innovation and more in inclusion. Being early no longer mattered as much as being aligned. Decisions were shaped to fit prevailing expectations, not because they were optimal, but because divergence carried cost. Coordination created winners without naming them. Those who helped define timing standards and share responses gained leverage over outcomes without issuing orders. Their influence came from presence rather than authority. Being part of coordination meant shaping reality before it hardened. Exclusion, meanwhile, became subtle. No rule barred participation. No law was broken. But those outside alignment received signals late. They reacted rather than shaped. Their decisions appeared risky, simply because they were different. Coordination enforced conformity without enforcement. London's institutions struggled with the implications. Coordination looked cooperative, but its effects were distributive. Power flowed toward those already embedded in networks of alignment. Smaller actors, new entrants, and dissenting views found themselves marginalized without explanation. The danger deepened when coordination began replacing debate. Decisions formed through mutual adjustment rather than discussion. There was no forum to challenge direction, only momentum to join or resist. And resisting momentum felt increasingly dangerous. Public confidence began to thin. Outcomes felt predecided. Influence appeared inaccessible. Coordination, once framed as a technical solution, now looked like an unspoken hierarchy, one that governed without transparency or accountability. London confronted an uncomfortable realization. When coordination decides outcomes, it becomes political by nature. Choices about who aligns when alignment occurs, and which signals matter, are never neutral. The city now stood inside a system where power no longer announced itself. It synchronized. And once synchronization began shaping distribution, the question was no longer how to coordinate, but who coordination ultimately served. The conflict surfaced when coordination began producing resistance. Actors left outside alignment loops started questioning outcomes they had no role in shaping. Decisions felt imposed without explanation. Power appeared concentrated, but nowhere visible enough to challenge. Inside the system, coordination hardened into expectation. Moving together was no longer a choice. It was the price of participation. Those who hesitated were interpreted as threats to stability. Divergence was framed as irresponsibility, even when grounded in evidence. This created a dangerous feedback loop. The more coordination excluded dissent, the more brittle it became. Errors went unchallenged. Assumptions reinforced themselves. When alignment was wrong, it was wrong everywhere at once, and correction arrived late. Tension escalated as political pressure entered the system. Governments, firms, and publics demanded answers. Who decided this direction? Who benefited? Who was accountable? Coordination could not answer these questions because it had never been designed to. The breaking moment came when a coordinated response triggered widespread harm that no single actor could justify publicly. Alignment had been efficient, but legitimacy had collapsed. The system had moved smoothly, yet trust evaporated. London confronted a stark truth. Coordination without accountability becomes coercive. What begins as cooperation can quietly turn into governance, without consent, oversight, or explanation. Power does not need force to dominate. It only needs synchronization without scrutiny. The city now faced a defining challenge. Either coordination would become transparent and contestable, or it would harden into an invisible authority no one could safely oppose. The resolution came through politicizing coordination openly rather than pretending it was neutral. London accepted that alignment always carries consequences, and that those consequences must be debated, not hidden. Frameworks were introduced that made coordination visible. Who participated? When alignment occurred? How decisions formed? Coordination gained process, explanation, and challenge. It stopped being automatic and became deliberate. This transparency changed behavior. Alignment slowed slightly, but legitimacy returned. Participants could question direction without being excluded. Dissent became part of coordination rather than a threat to it. Power remained distributed, but it was no longer silent. London adapted by becoming a forum rather than a controller. The city hosted spaces where alignment could be examined publicly, not just enacted privately. Coordination remained central, but it now carried responsibility. The lesson endured. Coordination is never just technical. It shapes outcomes, distributes power, and defines inclusion. When treated as neutral, it becomes coercive. When treated as political, it can be governed. London moved forward with a clearer understanding. In complex systems, the most dangerous power is the one that claims it has none. Coordination had become political, and by naming it, the city took the first step toward making it accountable. Subscribe to join the journey. Why